Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I'm going to do some disassembly and maintenance for you on this little guy right here. This is the Hogue Knives Trauma. So, let's go on ahead and get this guy taken apart. First off, one quick note. Hogue Knives sent along this little rubber mat, and I figured, you know what, it seems just about right to go on ahead and do that. One other thing that I'll note here, more kind of in dedication, is this is the piece of literature that came with this knife. Well, one of the Hogues I just got recently. But previously, it was the case that warranties were voided by disassembly, but nowadays we have aftermarket disassembly and reassembly is at your own risk. Problems found to be caused by improper disassembly, assembly, not covered under warranty, may be assessed. That is absolutely exactly what I want to see. So in some of my old Hogue videos, you saw, comments, oh, they should make that not a thing. They have fixed that. That is an absolutely beautiful thing that they are now allowing you to take it apart. And if you screw it up, it's on you because that's the way it should be. Okay, so this is a sliding bar lock style knife. You do not need to take the steps that I'm about to disassemble this knife. In practice, all you really need to do is pop out the pivot and remove things that way. But actually, I'm going to go ahead and take it a little bit further apart just because I want to see more what the construction looks like. We have a non-free spinning pivot on the back here, which is a beautiful thing. And that allows us to get the pivot out. I'll go ahead and put this over here. And then I'll start taking some of these other body screws out of here. Those are not T10, those are T8. All right, I'll pop that out, and I'll put you in the H for Hogue. Come on, broski. Get out of there. Broski? Really? Really, Nick? Huh. All right, that's the pivot for the glass breaker. Oh, and by the way, it was worth highlighting that the knife was centered. But okay, where did that little guy go? You go in the O, and then this guy goes in the G. So that goes here, this goes, come on there. And we're going to see, okay, so interesting. I'm glad I took that out. What we see here is there is a ball on a spring. That spring is going to be very yeet ready. It is going to be very easy for this spring to come, well, is it? Is it captive? Holy crap, the spring is captive. Or it's fit in there in such a way that I don't have to worry about it. Either way, that's great. The ball, however, is not. So you want to make sure if you do take this guy apart that you're not doing anything fancy there. But what we see is the internals of this are very straightforward, right? There's really not a whole lot going on. This part here is just a canonical sliding bar style lock. We see an omega spring here. And if I wanted to, I could take this liner off further by removing this little bit in the back here. I really don't think I need to at this point. Like I said, you as the consumer don't need to really ever do that. There's really not that much reason to get all up inside the liners of this. But you could by removing this and this. But I was just kind of curious how the assembly is. Then the other side is roughly symmetrical, except without the cutout for your strap cutter, which lives here and rotates out like this, with that ball in position. By the way, it's also worth noting that there is a detent ball there, and that will just be sliding from this hole over to this hole to this. So you can see exactly how this whole thing is going to work. Nice, pretty straightforward construction. Not a whole lot to complain about here. So I'm going to go ahead and put this guy back, put the scale back together, and then I'll do the disassembly in the way I generally advocate doing it for most of you people. Nice. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop that ball bearing someplace it doesn't need to be. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this, the glass breaker here down in such a way that when I put everything down there, the pivot, or the detent ball, that is, will be in proper positioning. Good. Then, do I have anything else I need to re-input in here? Re-input, wow. Okay, so that yeeted itself. That's the spring. I can live with that. I'll go ahead and put this here, and I'm just going to use the scale here to press things down. Okay, so what we see here is now I have compressed the detent ball into its proper positioning here, and actually, first things first, I am going to put in this screw right here. And let me grab some thread locker. And by the way, if you're curious about this or any of the other tools I'm using during today's disassembly, go ahead and check out nickshabazz.com/tools. And you will see a list of everything I use, which could be of some help to you down the road. All right, so I'm going to put this guy in first. The reason I'm doing that is just so that I don't have to worry about this ball going and flying across the room here. It just keeps that part under control. Now what I can do is, with less time pressure, go in and reattach the handle. Again, everything I've done here so far, you really don't need to do. I probably actually could have, I could have put a little bit of lubrication on the detent ball there, but what I can actually do is just pull it out and then apply a little tiny bit. Using knife pivot lube here, apparently, but I'm going to apply a little tiny bit right to the detent ball path right there, and that will then spread itself along there and smooth that whole affair out. Okay, beautiful. Anyways, so did I put Loctite on this screw yet? No, I did not. All right. Go ahead and put that here. This guy has actually gotten a little bit of carry before I took it apart. Not too much, but I had it out in the garden at one point in time, hence the dirt on it. Didn't come dirty from the factory. Generally speaking, I try to do the disassembly before I, get too deep into it, so that way I'm carrying everything in a Nick Shabazz reassembled state, better or for worse. But this guy just happened to hop in there. Had a couple of days there where I was busy filming the regular reviews and didn't have time to get in there and do some disassemblies. Okay, so now, at this point in time, we are going to use movie magic and the power of pretending to pretend that we're just getting started here. If you have this guy in your pocket, for instance, and you realize, oh no, the action's come up, you are responding to a medical situation at a local maple syrup factory, because this is Canada, I guess, and you happen to drop your knife into a vat of boiling maple syrup. How do you go about maintaining the knife? How do you go about getting it back to normal? Because at that point, it would be all sticky and unpleasant. Well, the very best way to do that, maybe vat of maple syrup, you'd have to take the whole thing apart, right? But in practice, most of the time, I'm going to use this tool here to push it through, to push the pivot through. Most of the time, what you're going to want to do is just that. You're going to want to push the pivot through. So I'm going to use my finger back here, and I'm going to pull back on the bar lock here. And I'm keeping the blade, I'm being careful here to keep the blade from moving around too much, but I'm just kind of easing the pivot out, letting it slowly slide out on the back side there. And then just kind of press it the rest of the way. Come on. Work your way through there, bro. Come on. Is this fixed in place? I sure hope not, because otherwise this is going to get more complicated. I think it's just thread locked in place. The reason I say that is there is considerable thread locker residue up around the side of this, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use this tool here, and I'm going to see if I can scrape around the edges of this and see if I can't break that free. That should hopefully allow me to get in there and get the pivot the rest of the way out. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sort of use the table. I'm balancing it on here and then just using the table, stab it into it a little bit and seeing if I'm getting any movement at all. If this is protruding at all above the baseline there. And again, I'm wanting to keep the axis or the sliding bar style lock. There we go. Okay, see, we're very slightly becoming proud of the scale there. This is just kind of locked in place with some thread locker here. Am I using the right side of this? Yeah. Just slowly working it through. Not applying all that crazy much force. Just working it. And as I'm doing this, it is very gradually sliding its way out of there. Not the end of the world. Just going to take a bit. I suspect that there's all at once going to be a kind of a slip and then it'll go. I am to that extent going to do it this way. That way the blade sort of falls down that way rather than toward my hand. Is this tool going to be big enough to be? I think that tool might actually be a little too wide for the... So I'm going to use this little guy here. This is the back of a Knife Pivot Lube brand swab. Are we pushing further? That does not have enough beef to it, I don't think. Yeah, I don't have enough beef there. Let's see here. What else can I use to push this through? I can use this watch spring bar tool. Pressing on the bottom of the pivot. Wow, this guy does not want to move. This is impressive. Like I said, I believe that this guy has been sort of thread locked into the liner. They used too much and it kind of moved down into there. One approach that I obviously could take here, well, maybe not obviously, obvious to me, but would be to use the, this is one of the ones. One thing I'm going to go ahead and do, actually, to make my life a little easier as I'm doing this, is to take a Q-tip here, just a conventional cotton swab. Does not need to be a certain brand, and I'm just going to break it in half. I'm just going to break it in half, he says, intensely to this Q-tip that does just not want to break in half. Just going to break the Q-tip in half. Okay, screw it. If you want to fight me, I will win. I am the human. I use tools. There we go. I'm going to take this freaking Q-tip, and I'm just going to jam it right here. That's going to keep the lock disengaged there. Now, I'm hoping, beyond hope, that I can get in here. What's my size like there? Gives me plenty of friction. Wow, this is really wedged in. Huh. How could I be being an idiot here? That's always my question. When I have a situation like this, the question is like, what am I doing wrong here? How could I be being dumb? There are many ways a man can be dumb. I've found many of them in my time. But let's go on ahead and try something else. What I'm going to do here is just to I'm going to over-tighten the pivot a little bit. And my goal, my hope, my dream, my fondest desire is that as I do so, I'm actually going to pull the pivot in slightly. And I have. Okay, good. So that means the pivot is actually moving a little bit. And as I do so, it might actually rotate the pivot slightly. And as it rotates, that might help to break off some of that thread locker a little bit and allow me to get back in there again. And maybe that'll make my life easier. I don't know. But again, the solution here is not going to be, well, okay, maybe the solution is going to be brute force. But for the moment, I'm hoping the solution is not brute force. You should always be trying to work smart rather than hard as you do in this kind of work. That seems like it should be roughly the right size, so maybe that wasn't the problem. So I'm going to go back to what I was doing, where I'm going to use this little tool here, and I'm just going to kind of go back and forth here and see if I can't get this pivot slipping and sliding on out. Yeah, okay, we're slowly coming loose here. Good Lord. Thread lock much? Yeah, we're making progress. It's hard-fought progress, by God, but it's progress. Okay, this has the D shape made into it, so maybe it'll slip through. There we go. Slow but sure. I feel like we're making real progress here. I think I'm going to be able to do some very nice things for the action. If there's this much thread lock in there, that's going to cause some troubles. The other approach I could, of course, take would be to use a little bit more force, like an impulse or something like that, to tap it with something. Actually, I wonder. The goal there was not, of course, to put a bunch of force on it, but just to put a little impulse in there to break free some of that thread lock as it was coming through. Yeah, good. Slowly but surely working the way out of there. Good Lord, guys. There we go. Whew. Okay. Now I have to be a little more sensitive to the directionality of the pivot. Is it? Maybe it's catching up on the edge of the thing now so I can push it through with something smaller. I don't think so, but it's worth trying. Yeah, see, look, it's now sticking way up there. Sometimes it just fights you, you know? Coming. So close. Any minute now, this is just going to let go. And right now I've got the blade, like, okay, let's just to show you my thought process here. I'm gripping it such that even if, because there's a full, well, relatively full backspace around here, even if the blade were to come out, it's going to catch against the axis pin here and against the back here. So as I'm gripping like this, there's not really a chance of the blade going out of control and hurting me, to the best of my knowledge. So we should be okay, even when that does go through. And the other thing is, when this goes through, this tool should go in and replace the pivot instantly. So we shouldn't have a major issue there either. But, who knows? Okay, see, now we're at a place where we actually have a little bit of clearance there. The pivot is partly out. So I'm going to get in here and I'm going to try this. I'm going to use this little spudger tool and see if I can't get under the pivot and give it a little bit of encouragement. That way, that ain't working. I think it's just too... the gap underneath isn't big enough yet. All right. Let's continue the encouragement process here. Wow. Yeah, okay, we're almost there. See, look how far we are out. And again, I'm not putting all that much crazy force onto this. I'm just basically telling it, look, I'm the human here. I'm going to win. You're with me or you're against me. Only the Sith deal in absolutes, but at the same time, dude, come on. Yes, that was a prequel reference. No, that's not an endorsement of those films. Okay, we are mostly out here. This is super tight, though. Wow. Getting this back in could be fun. I need to get a vise for my disassembly table. Usually knives are my vice. Okay. Let's get this back in here. And we're through. 17 minutes into this disassembly, we have finally got the blade out. Because now that that pivot is out, I can just lift the blade out accordingly, right? Then I reach in here with my pair of tweezers. I grab this other phosphor bronze washer, and then we're good to go. I can let the bar come back here. There we go, easy peasy. And we can see what was going on. Let's take a look at this pivot. We do see some clear signs of thread lock. And it looks like there might have been a burr on there, actually. That could have been part of the problem. But that was just not straightforward, unfortunately. Hopefully the way back in is easier than the way out. But either way, now we can actually finally get started cleaning the blade off. Easy peasy. But again, this is another argument for taking time and doing lots of slow effort rather than trying to slam it out of there, right? Knives are durable tools, but you also don't want to be applying force where force ain't meant to be applied, right? That can be a problem. This is too thick. So what I'm doing here is I'm just using a cleaning cloth here with some rubbing alcohol on it. I'm just getting it between the liners to, remove any gunk that's kind of built up in between there. So now at this point in time, the handle itself is completely fine. Action's a little bit better, although I think that's a little tight. Let me loosen that up a bit. But in practice, you don't really... Do I have play? I have the very slightest bit of play. It's kind of hard to say whether I'm going to be able to not get play with this. No, there's just play built in. All right, whatever. Not a big deal. But okay, at this point in time, all I really have to do now is to clean off these two washes here. I've cleaned off the blade already. These are nice, thick phosphor bronze washes. That is exactly the right choice for this pocket knife because you want it to be able to handle, weird situations, right? You search and rescue in the desert. You don't want sand getting in the bearings, things like that. So we are, that's a nice choice. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a little bit of, we're now in the reassembly stage, right? 90% of this time was just getting that guy loose. And so what I'm doing is I'm just applying, in this case, some knife pivot lube, and I am going to use that to adhere the washers to the blade. So I'm dropping that there, and I also put a little bit on the inside of the pivot as well, and I'll put that there. So now at this point in time, because there's that oil film on there, the blade and the washers are one integral packet. I'm going to also put a little bit on the outside of the washers. That was more than I needed to, but that's okay. X on Shabazz strikes again. At this point, I'm just using the thing to distribute the oil rather than... Yeah, so my goal here, my hope, my dream, my fondest desire would be to just take this entire affair and then just kind of push it through such that the washers and the blade go in at the same time. I am not capable of making two objects quite that parallel, so what I'm going to do instead is as follows. I'm going to find the Q-tip again, and I'm going to reinsert it. Because again, you cannot put the you can't put the blade in place with this bar all the way forward. That's just not how this works. That bar all the way forward is going to push the blade lower than the pivot. That's how it locks the knife up. If you think about the geometry for a moment, that's how it is. But anyways, now what I'm going to do is try again. And this time, my goal is not going to be to get everything perfectly aligned. There is too much, there's too little gap, basically, between the liners to have that a thing. But what I do want to do is get them all aligned roughly. Then I'm going to go on ahead and use this tool. And I'm going to try and include a link to this guy in my disassembly toolkit video. But my goal here is just to take this and insert it. I want to do it from this side because the pivot... Which side does the pivot come in from? I want to do it from this side. So I'll go ahead and I'll stick this whole thing in there. What I want to do now is I want to check to make sure that that the washers are in place. And they are. I see a washer to either side. They're parallel. They're symmetrical. That's good. Next, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lubricate the pivot. Because by God, apparently this is not going to want to go in smoothly. Maybe it will. I don't know. I can dream and hope that. But for the moment, based on how it came out, I don't know that it's going to want to go in easy. So I'm doing that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure, because there is a D shape to this whole thing. There is a flat surface at the top here. I'm going to make sure that that flat surface is aligned with the flat surface there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to basically push the pivot through. And again, because I have the bar being held back here, my hope here is that I should be able to effectively press through the pivot here. But I want to make sure that I'm not, again, just applying raw force here. Okay, yep, there we go. We're starting to slide through. And this tool is holding everything in place, so if I continue pressing, hopefully, I will be able to pop this the rest of the way through. And maybe get everything aligned. My goal now is just to make sure, am I pinching the washer? I may be a little bit. I see a little tiny crescent of copper at the very top there. So what I'm going to do is get in here with the spring bar tool and just kind of press that away a little bit. Okay, it's getting pushed through now. I'm feeling that. So I'm going to give it a last bit of shove with the thumb here. Then we're mostly in, right? I don't have to worry too much about it from this point. But now what I'm going to do is things are a little out of whack. So I'm going to put the screw. Where's my pivot screw again? Here it is. Still attached to the driver. This has a little further to go. Things aren't quite in alignment there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the screw here, and I'm going to tighten this down. And as I do so, you're going to see this guy pull in just a little bit deeper. Right? There we go. So now I've reached basically the tightest point. And I don't want to go too crazy tight, but I do want to go tight enough. And then, oh yeah, easy. Beautiful. Easy, breezy, beautiful. All right, and then I'm actually going to loosen this and this and this. The reason I'm doing that is because I tightened them with the pivot out. And so I want to make sure, actually, I should make sure. Do I have blade play? Oh, I have substantial blade play. Okay. Let's tighten the pivot down. But I want to get my pivot to the proper tightness here. And then adjust the body screws. And that should help a little bit with the centering. No play. Kind of want that a little looser if I can do it. Okay, good. That's nice. Now I'm going to go on ahead and re-tighten the body screws. And I'm applying a little bit of force on the blade in this direction. And hopefully that will get everything centered up a little bit. Beautiful. All right. Oh, the action is just an order of magnitude better. But the centering is not quite there. Interesting. I'm wondering whether in that process I might have bent things a little bit. Not the pivot necessarily, but the knife itself, because there's a little flex there. Getting that pivot out was not nothing. It was real easy to go back in. And you know, we're seeing a lot of Loctite residue, so I think they just overdid it badly as they were doing that, but interesting. All right. The other possibility is that I might have swapped the washers around. That might have actually caused my difficulty. I'm going to try and swap the washers over. Shouldn't be too bad, I hope. Maybe once I got the pivot out the first time, the second time won't be as terrible. That's my dream. Again, pull this back. Come on. Pull that back, and now I should be able to just press this out. No, pivot is absolutely not wanting to come loose again. And one more time with feeling. I'm going to give this a little bit of a moment here before I condemn it to, you know what, that's close enough. The action's great. Okay, it's coming easier this time. Come here. Let's press this down in there so that way I don't have to worry about that. Okay, yeah, this is coming a lot easier this time. Still not ideal, but... Come on. This part is optional, by the way. I am being a little retentive because I want to get the centering back to where it was. I want to make sure this guy looks just as good as it did, and, you know, so... But nonetheless, the fact that this has taken this much effort is, as the French would say, not ideal. But we'll figure it out. Almost there. A lot easier that time around. I didn't say easy, I said a lot easier. Okay, now what I'm going to do is take these bearings. Take these washers off. Of all the disassemblies, I figured we're going to be 30 minutes today. This was not among them. And I'm going to just go ahead and swap these around, such that one goes there, the other goes there. There's a chance that the washers is slightly different in size, and therefore I could end up with this trouble. All right, I want to come through from this side, and screwed that up. More specifically, the way I screwed that up is by everything popping apart prematurely. All right, let's slip this in here. Again, my goal is just to get both of these washers aligned. At this point, I have 1.5 washers aligned, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a tool here. I'm just going to push that through. There we go. And now I'm going to use this tool. And again, just going to push through. Both of my washers are in place. Both of them are aligned. Again, I'm going to set this guy up here. And again, I'm just going to try and press everything together. There we go. We are through. Push things as far as I can with my thumb, and then I will tighten. Tighten. The pivot screwed down. First, past the tightness I want to get everything fully seated. And the reason I'm doing that is just because I want this back part to be fully seated, right? Because if I tighten it, but I haven't fully seated that, then if that seats later on, then I'm loose suddenly. All right. Centering is the same at the moment. Okay. Oh, but it's not fully. There's still a little play in there. All right. I am almost done, I think. I just want to make sure that I can do something with this centering. And I may not be able to. What I'll probably actually do is stop the video here after I confirm. Did that help a little bit, or am I lying to myself? Either way, I'm going to stop the video here in a moment, and then I will probably play with this a little bit more after hours, so to speak. See if I can get that centering back to where it was. But regardless, putting the centering completely aside here, this is running an order of magnitude better than it was. Oh, and then the final thing I want to do, put a little bit of lubrication right here. That little bit of lubrication will be very nice at smoothing that out. Yeah, this is running a lot better than it was, just a little bit off in terms of that centering issue. So anyways, there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you. A little longer than I expected or hoped, but, you know, hey, that's life. And have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.